Hey, how are you doing today? I just wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about the gospel tracts that we use. And a lot of the tracts that we're using these days are business card size tracts, and we like these tracts. They're small, they fit in your pocket, and we get them printed from 1 million Tracts, and they do a really good job for us on printing these tracts. So I just wanted to run through some of the tracts that we've made and that we use, and how we use them. So this first tract we made, looks like the Monopoly Get Out of Hell free card, and these tracts have been very popular, especially when we go out to places where there's big crowds and we hand them out, and people immediately they'll see that they'll think it says get out of jail, and they're like, oh, I might need one of those tonight or something. And I'm like, well, you better read it again. And when they do, they're often coming back to get another one to give to a friend or family member. This tract that we made is got the bad news on one side and the good news on the other side. And what's fun about these is, oftentimes, if you go to a doctor and the doctor says, hey, I've got good news or bad news, which one would you like first? Well, you can do the same thing with this tract. When you hand it out, just ask the guy, hey, I've got some good news, I've got some bad news, which one would you like first? And you hand it to him. And on here we've left out any of the cultural relevant things like that a lot of tracts have, and stuck 100% to Scripture. So then we have transition verses from one side to the other, so that regardless whether they choose to start with the good news or the bad news, they'll end up reading both sides. This tract that we made here is actually real good for going up to a courthouse and handing out, but really is good anywhere. And it says in the front, this is the verdict, and that line comes from the first part of John 3:19. The rest of the verse says, light has come into the world, but men love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. And so, ultimately, whether you're in a courtroom or whether you're in the courtroom of heaven when you die, everybody has a verdict coming, and that's a guilty verdict without Christ, and that's what this tract helps to point out. This is a fun tract. We've actually had a lot of fun with this. It just says 2 + 2 equals on it, and the reason why we made this tract is we talk to so many people that they think, oh, well, whatever I believe, that's what's going to happen to me when I die. So if I believe in reincarnation, I'll be reincarnated. Or if I believe that I'm saved by my religion, whether it's being a Jewish person or a Hindu or a Muslim or Catholic or whatever, they'll think, well, just because I believe it, it's true. Well, the reality is what's true is true, and 2 + 2 is equal to 4, and not any of the other billion numbers out there. And so this just kind of takes from a logical perspective, and then speaks to a man's conscience, and then refers them to a particular area on our website where it talks about that Jesus is the true Son of God and the only way to salvation. Now, I've also made some tracts that are relevant to particular events. And so, recently, there was been a lot of things in the news about financial bailouts. So we made this tract, and it says on the front, important information about your bailout. And, it talks about the struggling economy and the bailout packages that have been offered to various companies. But then it talks about the most important bailout is our spiritual bailout that Jesus Christ provided for us. And so these have been very popular, and we've handed a lot of them out. And, we'll just kind of see where the economy goes and decide whether to print more of them or not. We have some other ones that are particularly good for certain times of the year. And the rest of the tracts I'm going to show you here are actually ones that were made by 1 million Tracts that we get from them. Some of them we customize a little bit, and some we just print them with our website on them. But this one's good. Right now it's a week before the 4th of July, and this one just points out on front, says celebrate freedom, and has some lines from the Declaration of Independence. And then on the back talks about the freedom that we have through Christ, because he died on the cross and provided that freedom for us. And so at Christmas we had some other tracts that were relevant for Christmas time, and we will print other ones based on different holidays. And it's just a good way as a conversation starter, or to transition the conversation to spiritual things, to start with something that everybody knows about, and in this case, a holiday like this. It's a tract that I really like. On the front it says, "Is this man going to hell or heaven?" And when I hand this out, a lot of times if we go out to Dallas, go to American Airlines, and I'll like put my finger over this side and I'll walk up to people and say, "Have you seen this guy around here?" And they'll look at it and go, "No, I'm not so sure if I've seen him or not." Or I can even do that in a restaurant. Say, does this guy eat here? Or if you're in a store, does this guy shop here? And then they're like, "Oh, I'm not so sure." And I'll hand it to them and say, "Well, here, why don't you take this and give me a call if you see him." And then, of course, got the gospel message on the back. These next two I'm going to show are really good for kids. My youngest son really enjoys handing this one out. This one on the front says, "You're in control," and has a bunch of video game controllers on it. And the kids love them, and they have a lot of fun receiving them, and our kids have a lot of fun handing these out. This one here we call the good card, and it has a little test on here. It says put your left thumb over this silver square, hold it there, and if you're a good person, the square will turn green. Well, the reality is there are none good when we judge ourselves by God's standard, the 10 Commandments, and then the tract then runs through the law. But it's a fun way to engage people and start up a conversation with them. We also tend to use a lot of tracts that are relative to sporting events. So if we're going out to a baseball game or basketball game, we can take a tract that will engage people based on that event. So this one is a baseball trivia tract. Again, it is made by 1 Million Tracts, but it has different trivia questions on here, which then gets the people interested that are going to the event. And then, of course, the last question, what do all baseball players have in common? And the correct answer on here is C, death, which then transitions the conversation to a spiritual. But this is good to use either in a conversation, or if you just have a chance to hand it to them and they go off to the game, quizzing their friends over these trivia questions. This one here we have a lot of fun with. Can you name 10 beers? And whether we're at in a bar district or out at a rock concert or something like that, people can name 10 of everything. Ask them to name 10 beers, 10 soft drinks, 10 celebrities, whatever. People can rattle them off. But you then ask them, can you name the 10 Commandments? It's a lot tougher. And most people don't know the 10 Commandments. But again, that's the method that God's going to judge by, on Judgment Day. And so this tract then allows a nice transition from the natural realm to the spiritual realm, and to have that spiritual conversation. And the one last track I want to show you here. This is the wine bottle riddle track, and it just says on the front, you must remove a marble from inside the sealed glass bottle without pulling the cork or damaging the bottle. How do you do it? And I'll give this to someone and say, here, just something to ponder. If I'm at a gas station filling up my car with gas, I'll leave a track in the credit card slot in the gas pump, and if there's someone at the next pump, I'll give them one of these and say, here's a riddle to consider. And I'll just tell them, hey, the answer's on the back. When you're ready to check it out, you can look there, but give it some thought first, and then they'll think about it, and then once they get the answer from the back, then it has another question of what do you think happens when you die. So anyways, those are some of the tracts that we're using. We're having a lot of fun with them, and we'd love to send you some tracts. You can sign up online at the Bezeugen Tract Club, and we'll send you an assortment of tracts every month. Thanks for listening. God bless.